Hello there! So I've always been more of an Equestria Girls person. I know, sacrilege. But I've said it before, I prefer more humanoid characters to anthropomorphic animals. So when there were rumors that G5 might have an Equestria Girls line, I was looking forward to what kind of content they'd make. But it never happened, and in my opinion, might never will. There's no stable, strong, long-form main show for G5, so making Equestria Girls movies or shorts would either not reach a large enough audience to create dolls or market them to, or cannibalize what they have right now. But let's say we forget that it might never happen. What would a G5 Equestria Girls even look like? The original was set in modern times, but G5 is set like 1,000 years or so into the future. So the main question is, when would Equestria Girls G5 take place? And my big suggestion is the 70s. I feel like the 70s is not only a unique choice, but it fits the characters as well as current trends. 70s fashion is really fun and colorful, and you can do a lot of things with that for dolls, but it's also back into the zeitgeist in a lot of fashion trends today. And a lot of music right now also takes a lot of cues and beats from music from the 70s. So I think it might be a perfect and niche choice if there was an Equestria Girls for G5. So I'm just going to go down a list of characters with how I feel each fit the 70s vibe, but also what I think their story would be for Equestria Girls. So of course we can start with Sunny, Star Scout. Sunny really exudes 70s energy. Not only does she rollerblade, which exploded in popularity in the 70s, she's all about unity and harmony. She organizes protests and fights for the betterment of community. She's literally the make love, not war hippie. But of course, Equestria Girls takes place in high school, so this Sunny would tackle plights of her fellow students or whatever oppression she feels by her school. She's an activist who's beholden by her small town problems instead of anything governmental. There's also her last name, Star Scout, so I think it just makes sense to make her a Girl Scout, or the legally distinct Equestria Girls version. So not only is she fighting for the rights of her friends, but also needing to complete different tasks to get badges, which does also fit into Sunny's fighting for the betterment of community thing. As a former Girl Scout, the Girl Scout law is all about loving your fellow Scouts, and a lot of the badges focus on charity and helping people. It also helps streamline her storyline, allowing her to go from plight to plight without becoming annoyingly preachy. So where does she live then? The Equestria Girls world doesn't have to be the same as the Pony world. In this case, I'm allowing Argyle to live. We don't know when he dies in G5, but I'd rather not make up a new character to take care of Sunny, or just ignore it altogether. Which, considering the other parents are involved in G5 normally, and I have them in this world, would be weird. Izzy was the other person that really clenched the 70s era for me. She's quirky, into helping a planet with upcycling, something she can share with Sunny. She's usually upbeat and chill. She communes with crystals, sees people's auras, or sparkle. She's a crystal-loving, aura-reading, artistic hippie. And I mean that lovingly. She's also very superstitious, or comes from a superstitious household, which for the 70s, we're gonna assume is an orphanage. And I mean, in the original show, we have no idea who her parents are or what happened to them, and every flashback we have to her as a young child, she's alone. So I feel like we just can't ignore that. But I also feel like that could play into a part into why she's so superstitious, as sort of like a coping mechanism. And I feel like you can also play more into her being the witchy, superstitious character in Equestria Girls, as magic doesn't exist there. Yet. We'll get to that later though. But it'd be fun to have a character who's constantly talking about how people's auras are getting dark, turning blue, or giving out crystals to people who she thinks could use them in the form of jewelry or charms. I just think you can have a lot of fun playing on that character, instead of just the annoying character she's kind of become. Zip I spent a little more time on. I wondered what aspects of her personality I wanted to use and hone in on. Obviously, her lightning bolt and her hair colors bring to mind Ziggy Stardust, the alter ego of David Bowie, a 70s music icon. Zip isn't a performer. In fact, she shies away from the spotlight. And so I decided to zoom in on some of the things that they do and tell your tale, Zip's detective sensibilities. And what do you know, the 70s was a popular time for detectives. Detective films were rampant, as were shows, including the most famous detective trio, Charlie's Angels, who inspired her outfit here. And I didn't realize until after I drew the ascot that it is also emblematic of another sleuth of the 70s, Fred Jones of Scooby-Doo. The only thing is, they're in high school, which means what is there to investigate? There's what I'll bring up with Misty, but you could also put her on like the school paper, or along with Sunny, she looks for injustices in their school and her neighborhood, which is how I would fit the friendship between them two. And lastly, there's the princess thing. I'll talk about this more with Pip, but I decided that to keep them coming from different towns and being new aspect, it'll just be the school districts were redrawn, and so Zip, Pip, and Izzy now have to attend Maritime High. Instead of being an actual princess, Queen Haven owns a business, and Zip is the heir to said business, even though she really doesn't want to be. Now we have Hitch. Obviously, Hitch can't be a sheriff, but lo and behold, what's still popular in the 70s? Western movies. And especially since he lives with his grandmother, he was definitely subjected to watching old westerns with her as well. So I think you can obviously give Hitch a desire to want to be a sheriff, be really into western films and TV shows and those heroes that exude a protective attitude. Because he wants to protect his friends, but also keep everything peaceful and serve his community. I debated making him like a hall monitor character, since they're not really that involved in actually protecting anything, but also hall monitors are generally annoying characters. So I think it's better to just give him a strong sense of justice, which might cause him to be at odds with himself when it conflicts with the rules. And since Spike turned into a dog, Sparky is also a dog, and Sparky can't talk anyway, so no talking dog shenanigans here. And you can keep the story of Hitch finding Sparky, but turn him like finding Sparky in a box on the side of the road and deciding to take him in and take care of him. Maybe he hides Sparky from his grandma because he doesn't think she enjoyed taking care of an animal, but Grandma Figgy does know and just allows him to do it by himself. But more importantly, it sort of takes away from the dad part of Hitch's personality and just makes him a caring guy who will nurse a puppy he found on the side of the road or any other animal, which I personally prefer because I feel like they sort of sideline Hitch as just the dad of the group. Pip is very obviously inspired by the 1920s. I mean, she has the hair, the headwear, her wings are fluffy like a feather boa, but these are also things popular in the 70s. The feathers on the headbands usually hang down, but I made concessions. Another aspect of Pip's personality that just jives with the 70s is that she's a total diva. She likes to command attention when she sings, and she owns it, and I wasn't gonna give her a diva outfit though, because she's still technically a high schooler. So I give her a modified version of like a collar dress, and of course chunky and gold jewelry, which was popular in both the 20s and 70s. The one aspect of Pip that can't translate over is the social media part of her. Oh no! There are no cell phones in the 70s, no internet, no video games. Horror movies, however, really picked up in the 70s, and with Pip's love of horror, you could tap more into that part of her, having her attend a horror movie and being fine while everyone else is having nightmares or something. Because I feel like we don't get enough of horror-loving Pip. Which brings us to the hair. So, here's the idea. Queen Haven is no longer an actual queen, but rather the queen of beehives and blowouts. That's right, she owns a small chain of hairdressers that she hopes to hand down to Zip, who really doesn't care, and Pip, who works there part-time. And she enjoys making people look good, and she loves to sing while doing it. And honestly, I actually really like this idea. It keeps the legacy expectation, but allows Pip to still work in a hairdresser, and they still get to be somewhat rich. Misty is the linchpin in all of this. She is how we'll connect magic to this universe and not just make it a human AU. So here's the pitch. Misty's stepmom, Opaline, has recently passed. She doesn't have to be evil in this universe, and yes, that will mean that Alphabetto and Opaline were in a relationship, but again, she doesn't have to be the exact same character, and she'll have died off screen anyway, so you won't have to see any of that relationship. It's her death that prompts them to move to Maritime Bay. But in this universe, Opaline was obsessed with a weird book, and hid it all in her room that she wouldn't let anyone in. And after her death, Misty ventures into Opaline's secret room in order to pack everything up for the move, and discovers that book, a spell book for equestrian magic. We established in the first Equestria Girls that there are natural portals throughout the world, and so Opaline discovers this book, which came out of one of those portals. She never quite nailed how to use what was in the book though, but with the help of her friends, Misty is able to do what Opaline never could, tap into equestrian magic. In G5, they're trying to establish Misty as sort of like the magician of the group, which to me is nice. The girl who never even had cutie mark magic is now coming into her own power and learning how to use it, but for good. So it makes sense to me to have her to be the one to bring equestrian magic into the human world. And unlike in the original Equestria Girls, that they'd actually hide their magic this time, and so she's having it out in the open and everyone just accept it. Heck, maybe Alphabet doesn't even want Misty to go into that stuff because of how obsessive Opaline got. So she studies the book in secret and over at her friends' places, and of course shenanigans ensue. And that's also where I wanted to bring in the Zip Detective part is, where does this book come from? How do you use it? Why does Opaline have it? That sort of thing. And that's my basic idea for G5 Equestria Girls. It's not perfect, and technically the whole story could be translated to current day anyways, but I still believe that the 70s is a fun and unique and perfect era for this generation. Either way, thanks for listening. Bye-bye!